Now, Major, you've referred to the White House's effort to create what you called a rhetorical dam, so to speak, around how Nunes obtained information on its grounds and in order to resist answering questions. So describe the defensive posturing here and what exactly it enables the White House to do.
All right, let's talk about today's development. The White House sent a letter to the chairman of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, Republican and Democrat, saying, hey, we have some information that you might find relevant to your investigation. We also believe it might give you information that you don't currently possess about incidental collection of information about Trump transition officials during the transition, implying this was done by the Obama administration. The letter says people's civil rights might have been violated, that this incidental collection may have been illegally leaked. And all that's in this White House letter that suddenly arises at a time when those relevant chairmen, except for one, Devin Nunes of California, haven't been given any information by this White House. Chairman Nunes did get information here at the White House a week ago, and only he got it. Nobody else that was sent this letter to today by the White House. So this now inclusive effort by the White House to bring others involved raises a lot of questions. Number one, why wasn't that tactic used originally? Why did the White House allow Chairman Nunes, and only Chairman Nunes, who we should point out and remind our audience was a senior member of the Trump transition team, to come here to the White House, view this classified information in a classified setting, and then brief the president and the press about it, and not disclose it to his fellow Republican or Democratic House Intelligence Committee members? And why were the Senate Intelligence Committee leaders, Republican and Democrat, left out of this process entirely until just now, just today? Well, the White House won't answer any of those questions. And the rhetorical dam metaphor I put together is really a reflection of what happened at today's briefing, because the White House Press Secretary, Sean Spicer, simply refuses to entertain any questions about this process, how Nunes got what he got and why he got what he got, because the White House now says, hey, we've invited everyone to come look at it. They're going to go through the information. They get to ask whatever questions they want. And our hands are essentially clean now because we've brought them all over, or at least invited them all over to take a look at this. Skipping over this intervening week when all sorts of questions were asked about the White House collaborating with someone that is theoretically empowered to investigate it about Russian meddling in the 2016 election. So this letter is now the White House's big shield. Process questions don't matter. We've invited everyone to come over and take a look at it. That's all we're going to say. But the process questions do matter because there's a lot of politics involved in this. And whatever the answer is about Russian meddling in the 2016 election, and whatever is or isn't established about Trump campaign officials either knowing about it, participating intentionally or inadvertently, has to have the credibility and believability within the minds of the general public. And I've talked to Republicans who want to find ways to defend Chairman Nunes's conduct, and they're finding it increasingly difficult to do that based on their understanding of what a chairman of a House Intelligence Committee ought to do, how he ought to collaborate with his fellow Republican and Democratic committee members, and how avoiding the appearance of collaborating with the White House that it is investigating undermines all sorts of areas of credibility.
Well, Sean Spicer, the press secretary, also declined, Major, to comment on the degree that the president was involved in requesting information to back up his initial wiretap assertion. Is that more of the same? What do you make of that?
Well, that's an important point in all of this. How did we get here? How did this all start? With a baseless Twitter set of tweets, rather, 4 of them, in which the president said President Obama ordered Trump Tower to be wiretapped. And we have traveled a great distance away from that baseless assertion made on Twitter by the President of the United States to this point where there is some suggestion, and the White House letter today very much implies that information was collected incidentally during surveillance of foreign officials, and that information involved Trump transition officials. And the New York Times reported today that that information was provided to Chairman Nunes here at the White House by 2 National Security Council staffers. Back on March 23rd, Sean Spicer said that didn't make any sense. That whole implication and line of questioning didn't pass, his words, not mine, the smell test. Well, when asked today if this New York Times story placing the sourcing of that information inside the White House was wrong, Sean Spicer said, "I'm not commenting. I'm not dealing with that at all." That goes back to that rhetorical dam I was referring to a few moments ago. No process questions. How it all originated doesn't matter. Don't look there. Only look at this letter we've sent asking everyone to come on over. So that's the defensive posture the White House is in. Only look to what's going to happen in the future. Don't get us bogged down with how this information was provided to one member of Congress and only one member of Congress. And that member of Congress, the White House wants the country to believe, just coincidentally was a member of the Trump transition and by far the most willing, if not most aggressive defender of this White House on Capitol Hill.
And buried underneath all of this, Major, today, we do want to make mention that it was announced Thursday that Katie Walsh, the White House's deputy chief of staff, will now join a nonprofit group supporting the president's agenda. What is the White House saying about this? And do you think that this is a sign of things to come for others in that staff?
It might be. I don't want to overread this or overdraw this, but it is very significant that Katie Walsh, the deputy to Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, is leaving the White House. Almost never does someone leave a position of that importance and that authority voluntarily. Now, the White House is saying she wasn't fired. She's taking another position. Anyone who's worked in the White House, especially at that level, and I will say almost never because never is a very difficult thing to assert in politics and journalism about politics, but it is exceedingly rare, especially this early in administration like this one. And especially when you consider that Katie Walsh was brought in by the chief of staff, Reince Priebus. They have a very close professional working relationship. Katie did a tremendous amount of work on behalf of the chief of staff, Reince Priebus, within this White House. And the clashes between Reince Priebus and others within the inner circle in the West Wing, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, and others are frequently denied by the White House, but that doesn't mean they're not true. And the loss for Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, of his top deputy is conspicuous in the sense that he may have lost a crucial ally in the organization, the communication, and the execution of efforts here at the White House. And that may be something that diminishes or makes it more difficult for Reince Priebus to achieve his agenda on the president's behalf when he has some very well-known and well-established rivals in the West Wing.
Interesting perspective. Major Garrett at the White House for us. Major, thanks.
Sure.